Something is hunting in these eastern forests that isn't supposed to exist. And it's already been tracking the deer for 20 minutes before the deer knows that there is anything wrong. Moving low, quiet, staying downwind, closing the distance one careful step at a time across crusted snow that would give away anything less patient. It isn't alone. Somewhere off to the left, out of the deer's sightline entirely, a second animal has already circled ahead. The howl that finally breaks the silence isn't a warning. It's a signal, time to the second, and it doesn't sound like it should. It starts as a coyote's rising call and then drops, thickens, splits into something with two registers fighting for the same note. The deer bolts on instinct, straight into the path the second animal has already claimed. What happens next takes less than a minute, and none of it looks like a lone predator's kill. Two animals, then a third, working the same target from different angles, cutting off each escape route before the deer can commit to one. This isn't opportunism, it's coordination. The kind normally associated with wolves, not with anything called a coyote. By morning, all that's left behind is churned snow and prints sunk deep enough to measure. Too wide. Too many, converging from too many directions to belong to a solitary hunter. Whatever moved through here tonight weighs more than double what a coyote should. Its skull is built wider, for real bite force, for prey much larger than the rodents and rabbits coyotes are supposed to specialize in. And this same kind of pack, in these same woods, has been documented running down something even larger than a deer, a full-grown moose, taken apart the same way, through coordination rather than brute size. Wolves hunt exactly like this. But wolves haven't held real numbers in this forest for close to 100 years. Here's the part that should unsettle you most. This wasn't a rare, unlucky encounter in one patch of woods. What just moved through this forest exists in the millions right now, spread across the entire eastern half of North America, quietly established and thriving at a scale nobody saw coming, while almost nobody outside a handful of research labs has any real idea what to call it. It isn't a coyote. It isn't a wolf. Nobody's agreed on a name for it yet. Nobody built this animal on purpose, but if you laid out exactly what it needed to survive here, this is close to what you'd design. Go back further than the kill. Go back almost 100 years, to the point where the woods running from the Great Lakes to the Atlantic coast still had their original top predator, the eastern wolf, bigger than a coyote. Built for exactly this terrain, these winters, this prey. Then people hunted it out. Not slowly, aggressively, methodically, region by region, until the eastern wolf had been erased from almost its entire range by the early 20th century. Bounties, traps, poison. Within a few decades, an animal that had run these forests for thousands of years had almost nowhere left to run at all. An empty territory this size doesn't stay empty. Something always moves into the gap. Coyotes started pushing east from the prairies, following the same collapse that had cleared the wolves out in the first place. And the last remaining eastern wolves, scattered, isolated, running out of their own kind to breed with, did something nobody had planned for. They bred with the coyotes moving in. For decades, that was mostly a theory. A pattern biologists suspected but couldn't prove without cutting open the genome and actually looking. That changed when a scientist named Roland Kayes got involved. Kayes didn't start with live animals. He started with drawers full of them, nearly 700 museum specimens, decades old, tissue samples and skulls collected by hunters and trappers and wildlife agencies going back generations, plus close to 200 skulls measured by hand for size and shape. He ran genetic analysis across tens of thousands of markers on the full genome, one of the most detailed studies ever conducted on a wild vertebrate. He wasn't looking to confirm a rumor. He was looking for a signature, buried in DNA, of exactly when and where this hybridization happened. He found it. The pattern pointed to something almost absurdly specific. A small number of coyote females, somewhere north of the Great Lakes, mating with male wolves at the exact edge of the wolves' collapsing range. Not a broad, gradual blending. A narrow bottleneck, a handful of pairings, at almost exactly the moment the eastern wolf ran out of other options. The animal running through those woods isn't simply a bigger coyote. It's an assembled predator built out of the wreckage of an extinction event, carrying 3 different bloodlines stitched into one body. Roughly 60% of it is coyote. That's the base. The adaptability, the willingness to eat almost anything, the ability to survive in territory a wolf would never tolerate. About a quarter of it is wolf. That's the size, the bite force, the instinct to run prey down in coordinated packs instead of hunting alone. Without that quarter, none of what happened in the snow last night would have been possible. A pure coyote doesn't take down a deer cleanly. It definitely doesn't take down a moose. And close to 1/10 of it is domestic dog, large breed dog, the kind of lineage that traces back to animals like German Shepherds and Dobermans, breeds selected generation after generation to live comfortably around people. That fragment of DNA does something the other 2 pieces can't. It dulls the one instinct that's kept every wild canine on this continent at a careful distance from humans for thousands of years. Put those 3 pieces together and you don't get a diluted, weaker version of either parent species. You get something better equipped than both of them for the specific world it was born into. A hunter with a wolf's size and a coyote's adaptability, wearing just enough of a domestic animal's comfort with people to survive in landscapes neither wolves nor coyotes could have managed alone. This wasn't slow evolution playing out over 10,000 generations, and it isn't a fringe theory floating around one lab either. Over 2 decades of genetic research from multiple teams working independently confirms the whole transformation happened inside roughly 90 years, a blink in evolutionary terms. An extinction event on one side, a desperate, last resort set of choices on the other. And out of that collision, something walked out that was built to win in exactly the world humans had just finished reshaping. It didn't stay contained to a handful of forests either. Today, that same hybrid lineage numbers in the millions, aggressively expanding its territory every single year to fill the gap left behind. 90 years ago, there was a gap where an apex predator used to be. Now there's something else standing in it. Something that shouldn't have been possible, built from parts nobody put there on purpose, thriving in numbers that would have sounded absurd to anyone standing in that empty forest a century ago. Kayes himself has described what happened here as evolution moving at a speed it isn't supposed to move at, hybridization accomplishing in decades what waiting on ordinary mutation might have taken centuries to manage. Nature didn't wait for a slow fix. It grabbed the fastest raw material available and built something new out of an emergency. And it still doesn't have an agreed-upon name. 3 in the morning, a quiet residential street. Porch lights off, one dog barking somewhere blocks away, and then falling silent again. Something moves along the tree line at the edge of a park. Low, quiet, deliberate. It crosses a stretch of open lawn in seconds, sticking to shadow. Gone before a porch light could even catch it. This isn't a forest. This is New York City. For years, the assumption was simple. Whatever happened out in those northeastern woods stayed in those northeastern woods. A rural phenomenon contained to deep forest and open farmland, nowhere near the 5 boroughs. That assumption was wrong. Researchers with the Gotham Coyote Project have spent years documenting exactly what's living inside city limits, and the numbers aren't rare sightings. They're established breeding populations, animals raising litters inside city parks, moving along rail corridors and greenways like they were built for it. Because, in a sense, they were. This same animal has quietly become a permanent resident of some of the most densely populated cities on the continent. Not passing through, not making do, denning, breeding, staying. It isn't only New York either. Boston has them, Washington, D.C. has them, Chicago has had breeding populations for years too. This is the same hybrid lineage that took down a moose in the snow 2 nights ago. But the story doesn't stop at "they're here now." It gets stranger. You'd expect the city version to be identical to the forest version, just relocated. Same animal, different backdrop. That's not what the research shows. Urban populations are measurably different from their rural relatives. Less wolf ancestry on average, smaller group sizes, a documented shift towards smaller prey, away from the deer and moose diet that defines the deep forest packs. And something even harder to explain away, a growing tolerance for human presence that goes beyond simple habituation. This isn't the forest predator wandering into a city by accident and making do. These animals have learned the city itself, moving along rail lines and greenways after dark, keeping territories down to 2 or 3 square miles instead of the much larger range a rural pack would need. This is a separate evolutionary track happening in real time, in parallel with the one that produced the animal you just watched hunt a deer through snow. Nature isn't dragging the same predator into a new environment and hoping it survives. It's actively reshaping it, dialing the wolf back, dialing the coyote's adaptability up, quietly building a quieter, smaller, more human-tolerant version specifically suited to concrete and traffic and porch lights instead of open forest. A predator molding itself, on purpose, to hunt in the spaces humans built specifically to keep the wild out. And it's working. Genetic sampling inside city limits has even turned up individual animals carrying unusually high levels of domestic dog ancestry. In one documented case, close to half, not accidental interbreeding at the margins. Here's the part that should actually unsettle you. Researchers didn't just find more dog ancestry in these city animals. They found specific genetic markers, already known from studies of dogs and wolves, tied directly to sociability toward humans. The exact biological switch that makes a domestic dog want to be near people instead of avoiding them. Those markers showed up in the highest dog ancestry individuals living inside city limits. Not a general softening, a specific, identifiable genetic pathway toward exactly the trait that matters most for surviving this close to people. Losing the fear, on purpose, at the level of DNA. Somewhere in that same city tonight, thousands of people are walking past a park after dark without a second thought. Most of them have no idea what's actually denning less than a mile from where they sleep. It isn't the same animal that ran that deer down in the snow. Not exactly. It's related. It's built from the same 3-part blueprint, the same wolf-coyote-dog assembly that came out of an extinction event a century ago. But it's already becoming something distinct from its forest relatives, a second version of the same hybrid, adapting to an entirely different kind of hunting ground. Nobody knows yet where that adaptation stops, whether the urban version keeps drifting further from its rural relatives with every generation, or whether it eventually settles into something stable. Whether 50 years from now, the animal denning in a city park and the animal running deer down in the forest will even still be recognizable as variations of the same lineage, or something that's split apart entirely. Right now, both versions are still expanding. Both are still winning. And almost nobody living within a mile of either one has any idea it's there. Go back to that first night. The snow, the howl that didn't sound right, the deer that never had a real chance once the trap closed around it. That kill wasn't an isolated event in one unlucky patch of forest, and it was never going to stay contained to forests at all. This same predator is still expanding its range south and west, well beyond the northeastern woods where this story started. Already documented pushing all the way down through Mexico and into Central America, working toward the Panama Canal over the last several years. Whether that expanding population carries the same wolf ancestry as the one that took down that deer isn't confirmed yet. Nobody's run the genetic testing on it the way Kay's ran it here. That's an honest gap, not a settled fact. And it might be the most important unanswered question in this entire story. Because that's the pattern running through all of this. An extinction event opens a gap. Something moves in, adapts, hybridizes, and starts winning in ways nothing predicted. Once, 90 years ago, out of the wreckage of the eastern wolf. Again, right now, in cities nobody expected it to reach. Maybe a third time already, somewhere south of the border, in a population nobody has tested closely enough to know for sure. We build cities specifically to keep the wild at a distance. Fences, traffic, concrete, porch lights, an entire built environment designed, whether anyone thinks about it that way or not, to separate human lives from whatever's out in the trees. So here's the question actually worth sitting with. We built our cities to keep the wild out. What happens when the wild builds a predator specifically to get back in? This is Hidden Latitude. Some of the most important stories are the ones nobody's watching.